And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're joined by my guest, Ernie. Ernie, thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
You're welcome.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself before we jump into it?
That's the hardest question right there. A little bit about myself. Let me see. I used to be an avid hunter, avid fisherman. All my life, I grew up around all of that stuff. Learned how to do all this stuff from my elders. Hunted with them, learned to track. Ex-military. I was trained in 17 different styles of martial arts or on my own, kind of just volunteered to learn all this stuff because I wanted to learn. I grew up in the country, and then I moved to a city, and I learned really quick what it was like growing up in the city and what bullies were. And I needed some tools to be able to defend myself. So I did that. And trying to think here now, it's hard for me to describe myself to everybody.
Right.
I swayed back from that on a few podcasts because I wanted people to look at me as just another person. And that was kind of a bad mood because nobody's going to listen to you unless you have something behind you, and if you have a PhD behind you, doctorate or anything like that, they'll listen to you even more. Like what you're saying is, wow, it's absolutely gospel. But you'll find that the majority of people are just people. They're like me. If I speak at a conference, I used to think that maybe I need to learn a different vocabulary here, so I appear more articulate. And I discovered that, I want the message to get out to everybody that's listening and not just a few people. Okay. I want, if there's kids listening, I want them to hear it and understand what I'm saying, not just people with higher educations. That way there we can push this community forward, because what I like to call it a testimony. If people want to think of it as a story, you can think of it as a story. For those of you that are researchers out there, you will be able to get some information here that may help you out. What happened to me happened almost 50 years ago, or I'll say a little over 40 years. And it took me a long time to come out because I investigated myself first. Why me?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about me? And I discovered an awful lot, by talking to other eyewitnesses. I think really, truthfully, that's pretty much it for me. I'm just a plain Jane guy.
Yeah.
No special anything.
I think a lot of us that end up having experiences are just typically just the normal person, and then we happen to be in the right place at the right time, or depending how you look at it, the wrong place in the wrong time. You never know.
Exactly.
But well, if you would like to start from the beginning, I will turn it over to you, and you can tell me and the audience what you experienced.
Sure. Like I said, I had to check myself out first. I had to go back all the way back to my childhood and think of everything that had happened to me, because some of the things were so subtle. Nobody ever told me anything about them. I had seen the Patty film, and it's in my childhood growing up. We had the hopes to get the biggest deer, the biggest fish, and I had the hope, like, wow, this is really cool. I said, maybe it would be great if I got to see something like this. But then I started thinking, there's probably only one of them, and the chances of me ever seeing it are zero. So I passed it right off, you know. But thinking back, all the signs were there, and I'll probably share some of those signs with everybody here, um, just to let you know what I brushed off. That I probably shouldn't have. I might have been a little bit more prepared, or maybe this encounter would have never happened to me, because maybe it would have scared me more, and I would have avoided that area. The area that I was in is called the Cobble Mountain area. It was on top of Drake Mountain, and I chose that area because it was very steep in legend. It's part of Unkemit's path. Um, Hunters did not like to go in there, and to this day, the Hilltown Hikers Association, they don't like to go up there, because even though they have markers, something keeps tearing their markers down. That's where they had the Cobble Mountain Festivals in Cobble Mountain, up near the reservoir there.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a lot of sightings up there, including one that is really close to my encounter. It was with another hunter, less than, I'd say, about a half a mile or so away from where my encounter happened. But being old school, what I used to do is I used to go down to the bookstore, because they sold topographical maps of any area that you wanted. And whatever area I was going to hunt in, I would take a topographical map, and I would make notes on where deer were going through their runs, their scrapes, their everything about them, food sources and everything. So that area I knew quite well, and I usually hunted by myself the majority of the times, because I couldn't get anybody else to go with me, or with my brother. This particular day, I was by myself. On one side of the mountain, there's an apple orchard, and that was in with about a half a mile of where I had my encounter. On the side of the mountain I chose to come in on that morning, because I had found signs of deer that were bedding down and using that side. There was probably within 2 to 3 miles from there a little place called Granville, and they were known for their apples and their cheese and everything. So there was a lot of food sources there. But that morning, I figured that what I would do is I would check the wind, see which way the wind was blowing, which would be more advantageous to me to go in there and harvest a deer. It was the first week of December, but it was the last day of hunting season. So I proceeded to walk in there, and with the pretenses, I knew where the deer were bedded, probably going to bed down. And I wanted to sneak up, get myself my deer, and get out of there. I didn't feel like having to drag a deer 2 miles or whatever by myself out to my car and all of that. Well, I had gotten in there early. It was still kind of dark. That's when I like to go in, because it takes a little bit of time to get in there. And sure enough, I was within probably, maybe 40 yards or so from where I believe them to be bedded down. There's a couple of boulders that are right there, and they're really big. One of them is known as Lookout Rock, and it's about 40 feet tall. And they heard me. It was kind of frosty out that morning. Uh, I could see my breath, so it had to be probably around maybe 34, I'll say 34 degrees anyways out there. There's a little bit of frost on the ground. There was no snow, and it was sporadic. So that trail that led up to the top had some flat rocks, like sandstone rocks. So I was able to walk on that, because when they jumped up, they headed away from me right up towards the top of the mountain. on the ridge line up there, and I knew that I only had two choices. One was to get behind him and try to gain distance on him in hopes that I could get a shot at him, or try to go around to their left. I chose to go around to their left because I felt that chasing them through stuff like that would just be futile. It wouldn't, I could have been at it all day long because I would have kept scaring them. They would have heard me.
Right.
So I knew that at the top of the mountain, the path went straight up over down to that apple orchard I told you about in the beginning. And at the very top of the mountain, it doglegged back over to the right. And right on that dogleg, there was a stone wall that went from the position of the path that I was on to that dogleg. And there was a little bit of an opening there with some old pines, not a lot of pines, just old pines, big fat pines that would have been on my side. That's where I was trying to get to, to set up an ambush. On the other side of the stone wall it was a beech nut grove. Well, I proceeded to try to get around the deer that were going up over the top of that ridge. And what I was doing, and I would have to explain it to you, is I was two-stepping. I was going toe heel. So if they did hear me, I would sound more like a four-legged animal, not a two-legged animal. I didn't want to alert them. So I was being as quiet as I possibly could in hopes that this would pan out. I heard them stop. I would stop. As soon as they started moving, I would move, but try to move as fast as I could without getting any twigs or leaves that were on that path, and get to some rocks to gain distance on them. As I approached that area that I was speaking of on that dogleg, I was able to scan it to make sure there wasn't any squirrels or turkeys or any kind of wildlife in there that was going to alert them that I was there or anything was there. I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything there. So I set up. I had successfully gotten out in front of them. They didn't know I was there. And I crouched down just a little bit. And I could hear them now walking again towards that stone wall. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them walking again towards that stone wall. So I brought my shotgun up. And I was ready. If one of them came over that stone wall, which they were going to have to do, I'd get a good shot, a good clean shot, and then that would be it right there. To my left-hand side, at about the 9 o'clock position, I picked up movement. At about 35 yards away, we Googled Earth that position of what I said what I'm about to tell you was, and and it came up at 38 yards. Well, there was a tree there, and I shifted my eyes over to that position, and I could see something that was laying down with the tree between it and the stone wall. I didn't know what it was, but I figured it was probably a deer. And I was hoping that it would stand, that it would be a buck and that it would stand and I could get that shot. But thinking about it, you have to understand, if them deer are getting ready to come over that stone wall and they panic, then they're going to go every which way. That deer near that tree is going to get up, and there's going to be trees between me and it's going to get away. So I'm not trying to move around. I'm just moving my eyes around. I'm still trying to maintain awareness of those deer on the other side of the stone wall. Well, it started scrunching up towards the tree a little bit more. It moved more. So again, I had to bring my focus back over to it a little bit more. And at that point, it was big bodied. It was not a deer. I was no longer convinced that it was probably a deer. It was not a deer, but it was big bodied. And I immediately thought the next animal would be a bear because it was big bodied. I had no bear permit. I didn't know what could happen at that point. It had its head basically around the other side of the tree, so it couldn't see me, and the wind was blowing into my direction, so it couldn't smell me. And I also figured it was a bear because maybe it came down the tree because there wasn't anything there to begin with. and maybe there's some cubs with it. So it was not going to pan out well if that is what it really is. So maintaining awareness of those deer on the other side of the stone wall, it started getting up more like it was actually hugging the tree. And now it's got the shape of a man up against that tree. Now I know it's not a bear, but I'm thinking I've never really seen another hunter in here. If that's a hunter on the other side of that tree and he doesn't know that I'm here, and them deer come over that stone wall and they go between us, I'm probably going to get shot because I'm in the open here. So I decided what I was going to do is just try to move up just a little bit. So if that did happen, I would appear in his peripheral, particularly if he had to swing his shotgun, because Massachusetts is shotgun. So I moved up just a little bit, and I could hear the deer still coming. They were browsing, but they were still coming. And this so-called guy stood up even more next to that tree. And he had his head around the opposite side of the tree. So I couldn't see his face or anything. And I know darn well that he couldn't see me. Now he's fully standing, and I can definitely see that there's something concerning here, something very suspicious here. He was the biggest man I've ever seen. I used to train bouncers. I've seen some pretty big guys. I trained in martial arts. I've fought in tournaments. I was basically a runt in my weight class. My weight class started at 187, I believe it was, and went to 225. So they put me in the open division, and there wasn't a man under 225. They were all much bigger than me. And this guy was huge, huge. So now I'm trying to find a twig, a leaf, something to measure this guy off on. A branch. And I spotted a piece of moss. And I said, well, if anything at all, I can, we don't talk or anything. We get a deer and I can figure out how big this guy really was. Well, it was about at that point there that all hell broke loose on the other side of that stone wall. And up until I came out with this, nobody believed that they ate deer. Nobody believed that they got in trees. Nobody believed anything too much about them to put them on a level with us. Whatever was on the other side of that stone wall, it sounded like one or more came out of a tree or a couple of the trees on the other side. And I could hear not just branches breaking, I could hear limbs breaking. I could hear boulders clacking together. It was a battle royale going on the other side of that stone wall. It was at that time there that this so-called man put his head around my side of the tree. And just as I planned, he caught me in his peripheral because he was looking directly over that stone wall. This being obviously was hunting with more than just by himself. He was set up on an ambush point, on a pinch point, just like wolves will do. They'll chase something and then another one will pick up the chase. They'll try to run them into other wolves or whatever. He was definitely, I don't know how he got there. I can assume how he got there, which I'll get into for you in a little while here. But he looked over that stone wall and he caught me in his peripheral and he looked over at me, looked back over that stone wall, and he snapped his head right back at me. And he had the look of shock, surprise that I was standing there. And I'm sure that I had the same look because now I know exactly what I'm looking at. Even though I'd never seen one before, this was not what you would consider fully as being a human. What I was looking at, I identified in my own head because I was able to eliminate a lot of things. You'll hear or you should have heard by now, things like uncanny valley, how your mind's going to fight you.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trained to remain calm. And he he at that point put his right leg out, and he was holding onto the tree with his left arm, and he swung his left leg around the tree, so he broadsided me. He was looking directly at me at about 35 yards away. And what I was looking at was, the only thing I can describe to you at this point was like a Neanderthal. And if you can see the pictures, Brandon can, above my head here,
Mm-hmm.
I had an artist. Took them months to come up with that, 2 to 3 times a week. I've got 6 drawings of what happened that day and what it was doing. I've got another one lower, but in any case, he looked right at me, and he took both hands, elbows in, about waist level. Uh, both hands were, and I'm demonstrating it to Brandon here. All his fingers were together, his thumbs were in, and his palms were facing me, just about chest level, and he pumped them twice at me. Now I got my shotgun pointed right at him. I really felt like I had a sidearm too, but I really felt like I just didn't have enough. If I took a shot, where am I supposed to shoot? Number one. Number two, there's more than one of them, and I'm history. If these things go south, but he's got my interest. I'm trying to figure out what is going on. I don't know anything about these things. So I don't know how they react or what they do or anything. It was just completely bizarre for me. Completely. I started to lower my shotgun because it felt like the way he looked at me, he would move his head towards me like a teacher would towards a student to see, are there lights on? You understand? It seemed to me he was asking me, whoa, hold on a second here. So I started lowering my shotgun, and he started taking steps towards me. And as he took steps towards me, again, he made another hand gesture to me. He took his right hand, right arm, right hand, fist closed, pointer finger out. He pointed directly to the middle of my chest. And then he pointed directly to the middle of his chest. Like I said, I investigated all this stuff. Over 40 years now, I know what these signs mean. I've gone over them with somebody, which I'll identify at some point here. Um, I took it to mean that we we were equal in some way. That he was really meaning me no harm, and the way he was looking at me was not menacing. Is it bothered me for many years. What I'm about to tell you is he knew how to approach me. He started walking towards me some more, and at that point, he took the same 2 hands and positioned them so that his elbows were still in and his palms were down, same space apart, fingers together, thumbs in like that, palms down, and put them right out there. Not flat out in front of him, just elbows in, arms bent a little bit, and held his palms down and looked at me. Then he turned his hands over, still in the same position, but turned his hands over so palms were facing the sky. I'm thinking in my own head that he quite possibly could be asking me or telling me he doesn't have any food and they're looking for food. As bizarre as it sounds, when you take everything that's happening into perspective, you really can't come up with anything else other than the fact is maybe he's really just trying to get close so he can attack or something, but he's pretty close at that point. He proceeds to walk closer to me, and he takes one hand, again, same arm, same hand, Fist closed, point your finger out, and he points over one shoulder of me, then my other shoulder. I'm figuring that because he's studying me, he's checking me out. And this whole time, I am definitely checking him out. I checked my wristwatch out. I can tell you about what hour it was, but I don't know how many minutes after the hour it was. I had checked the wind direction again to make sure it was in my favor. And he proceeded to walk closer. And I'm taking you folks on a journey with me here. It would have been super easy if he would have, from the very get go, turned and left my position. Right from the very get go, if all of them were to turn and leave the position, I could have gone down to the local bar and got myself a couple of drinks to simmer myself down, and I could be, I don't know, Class B sighting or whatever is, hey, I seen one or two. Okay. It would have been that easy, but he had to make my life difficult. After he made that gesture to me, he proceeded to get closer to me. I can see his skin tone. I can see his hairs. I can see where the hair stops and where the hair continues on. Just like if you could see my face or anybody with a beard, no hair up here, right up here on your cheekbones, no hair. It was all down here. The skin was like what I would call like a super dark uh, brown, not black, maybe a little ashy. Very hard to describe a color. He had the brow ridge, like I said, Neanderthal, and he had blue eyes, husky blue eyes at that. I was taken aback by that. At that point, he's standing right in front of me. And that's even bothersome for me to tell some people. You know, it was very hard for me to tell some people how close he actually was. I can tell you right now that he took his one hand, his right hand again, and he placed it down between the two of us, waist level, so that I could really see his palm. And he pointed to it with his other hand, his pointer finger, to his palm. While this is going on, I no longer have access to my shotgun. I had completely lowered it, but I was extremely concerned, and I was lowering my hand to my sidearm. And just as my hand was reaching or just touching the grip on my sidearm, he noticed what I was doing. He picked up my body movement and he adamantly tapped his palm. He definitely wanted me to look at his palm. So I did. I've had people ask me if I've seen a scar on his palm. That I did not notice. Had there been a scar there, somebody told me that would have been a sign of a covenant. Indigenous people will understand that. What I did notice was his hands were like our hands, all into perspective, all, how can I say, like my arms are only so long, you know, in proportion to my body. Same with his. His hands the same. But what I did not notice on his palm was a lifeline. And I'm told that some people are born without lifelines, but he did not have one. I knew that what I was going to have to do, even when he was at the halfway mark, because he was continuing on towards me, that at some point I think he was going to expect me to parlay something back to him that I understand, because everything he did, he kept looking at me and he would almost bow his head or nod his head like, do you understand? He was reading me as I was studying him. The hair on his body was 5 inches long in some spots, 4 inches long in other spots, maybe 6 inches long up around the neck, the head. His chest, you could now make out that he wasn't all hairy. At distance, people have to understand you can't tell, at 40, 50 yards if a man's face, if they have scrabble on their face, if they're not shaving completely with their beard and keeping it trimmed, you can't tell how high up that beard goes. But when he got close, I could tell. His hands were clean. Where you have hair on your knuckles, on your hands, they have hair. He had hair. Where we don't have hair, he didn't have any hair. Like on your knuckles, the backs of his hands had hair. His forearms, because I could see his forearm, it was turned over, exactly the same as ours. His fingers were clean. He didn't stink. Okay. Through my research, I found out pretty much why they could be stinking too. But it was at that point that I knew that I had to do something. Now, I like to add here that in order to see his pond, you're going to have to understand I was about 2.5 feet away. I only came up a bit above his bicep, below his shoulder, but above his bicep. I'm almost 6'3". This being, this forest person, which I like to call him, was absolutely enormous, huge, and fit. I mean, very fit. I chose to try to parlay some of the information back that I figured I understood. Like the second sign would have been me pointing to his chest. What that means is if I point to my chest first and then somebody else's, that means I'm better than you. If I point to you first, it means we're friends. We can be friends or we're buddies. We're equal. We're masters of the woods, as some indigenous people will identify with that. I made that hand gesture to him. Then I made the hand gesture for no food. I did not want to make the hand gesture that I wanted food. I just made the hand gesture that I had no food. With the one finger, my pointer finger, right arm, over one shoulder on him and over his other shoulder. It was at that point that things changed a little bit. He looked at me and nodded at me. He looked over the stone wall, turned a little bit towards that stone wall, put both hands up. And that's the picture you can see in the back here. Like you would use your hands like a megaphone. And he whooped. Up until then, you got to figure, folks, nobody knew they whooped 7 years ago. If they did, they weren't coming out and spreading the knowledge with everybody. Okay? He whooped 3 times, about a second and a half in between each whoop. Something that I am good at. I'm not bragging, I am good at it. It's something you learn in fighting, how much time you have left. But he whooped 3 times, and he looked back at me, and he just bowed his head just a little bit, looked back over that stone wall, and he whistled. And I'm here to tell you, nobody knew they did that. Some of you don't even know that, but they do. But deer whistle too. So he whistled, and the whistle sounded just like another person. It was a whistle that we used in our hunting parties when I was a kid to stay in contact with people who were spread out as we were making a drive towards one of our ambush points. Or if we had seen something, some sign or seen a deer, we would let that little whistle go. But this whistle was more of a like a come here kind of whistle, and he made a hand gesture as he was looking over at Stonewall, did it whistle, and it was like and waved his hand like come here, but he pointed back in the direction that he came from. And he turned and he looked at me one last time. He bowed his head to me. He turned away from me and he left my area. He didn't run, he didn't speed walk. It seemed very fluid, kind of quiet, and he proceeded out beyond the tree that he was originally at to about, I don't know, maybe another 35, 40 yards to put him, I figured about 55, 60 yards away from me. He turned back towards me and he was facing again, kitty corner. So he keep an eye on me and he's looking over at stone wall. And that's when I heard it. Something was coming through those saplings and it was not a deer. Definitely not a deer. And it was headed towards Drake Brook, which is on the other side of the stone wall where that dog leg goes around. This, whatever it was, I couldn't pick it up the movement yet, had to cross over that section of the stone wall, over that path and over that brook. And I knew that I'd be able to pick it up because it's kind of clear. You know, it wasn't a really heavily wooded area at the time up there. I was following the sound and watching for it. And sure enough, I picked up the movement as it crossed over the stone wall, the path, and then I saw it jump the brook. And this thing was what I call a cinnamon brown, like a brownish colored. And this thing was like a parkour runner. This thing was fluid, fast. If it wanted to, I've shot deer on the run, and this was faster. This was faster than that. And it ran right over to the bigger one. Now, I'm just going to give away how big the bigger one was because I did measure it off, and I'll get to that. But he was 7'8". And I got that from the tree. But I'll tell you how in a minute here. He was smaller than that big one there. It was his hair, I thought, was black. It was not black. It was dark, dark, dark brown. I could see where the hairs attached to the arm and the skin was about the same dark color as the hair. This other one that was cinnamon colored, he was over his shoulder, but shorter than him, taller than me, which probably would have put him at maybe around this one, her, him. I don't know. Probably around, I'd say 6'6", 6'7", 8", somewhere's around that vicinity. Because I had nothing to measure that off on except his own body. It went running all the way over to him. And now they're facing each other, but I'm still like, they're almost cornered to me. And they're having a little conversation. And I never heard the Sierra sounds. I thought I was actually hearing some kind of language that I would understand. I was trying my hardest to hear it. I couldn't make it out. It was like gibberish almost, but it seemed serious. So at one point, he stopped his little, what I think was chewing that smaller one out, and he pointed directly at me. Because I was still standing in my original position. He ratted me right out. I really wanted to follow them. I wanted to know. I wasn't scared. I really wanted to follow them and see where do they go? Where do they stay? Were they sleeping caves behind rocks? What? In trees? What's going on? You know? And that smaller one took a look over at me, looked back at him, and then did a double take, snapped his head at me also, like he couldn't believe I was standing there. And at that point, because he had to bow his head down just a little bit because there was a little branch coming out there where they were actually kind of standing. But that bigger one pointed to that smaller one and gave him a hand gesture and basically was telling him to flank me on my right. You could see he took his finger out, pointer finger, and made a half circle over in my direction to my right hand side. And then he pointed to his own self and he did the same gesture, like where he was going to go. I have no idea why he did that. Was it for my benefit? Because he could have just told him what to do, what I'm thinking, you know? And from there, They split up. That concerned me, but I knew that hopefully someday you folks would hear this not as a story or my testimony, but as research evidence that can be used to further your research. They're highly intelligent. They do have a language. They took off in their directions. I decided I was going to go over and measure off on the tree. Right before the tree, there was a little knoll. It looked like during the springtime you would have a perennial pool there. So I figured this one here, the big one, he was down below that little knoll and crawled on his belly up to that tree. That's why I never seen him. I didn't know how he got there. He was definitely set on an ambush. That's what gave me that idea that that's what was going on there. So I found that piece of moss on the tree. I walked up to it like a fool. I'm a retired butcher now, and I had to put my face right on the tree and put my hand on top of my head. Well, that doesn't work. No, I think I turned around. I think I turned around first because it doesn't work that way because then you can't turn back around. So then I faced the tree, held my hand there, and then I measured up from my hand because I knew how tall I am, right up to that little piece of moss right there. And I come up with 7'8". It's very difficult. Talk to hunters to figure out range in the forest when you're out there bow hunting. It's very difficult to tell the height of something, how tall something is in the forest, unless you know those ranges. Okay. You have to be able to measure it off. You can't just say it was 200 yards away and it was 10 feet tall. You really seriously need to know exactly how to measure that off. Even if you say you found the branch, I didn't have far to walk to go to that piece of moss over there. But they left. I decided it was time for me to leave, and I was deeply concerned. My spidey senses were tingling at that time because I didn't know what was really, really going on there. I didn't know why this ended that way. But I did not go back the same way that I went up that mountain. I went down the steepest side of that mountain. I had my pack on me. I had rope on me and stuff to help me. I figured if something was going to happen, at least I'd have a defendable position that they would have to come from above me. They definitely couldn't come to my right or left or below me because I had a clear field of view there. If I had gone back the path that I originally came up on, it's pretty well forested there. Lot of brush, things like that, mountain laurel, anything could jump out right there. But I got back and I went home and then I started thinking, who can I tell? And this is a big thing that goes through witnesses' minds, is first thing you're gonna think is I need to tell my friend, but then you're gonna say, well, how well do I really know my friend? They're probably gonna laugh at me. You want somebody to hear you, okay? I did want somebody to hear me, and I thought of family. And when I finally did tell my father, I sat down at his kitchen table, and this is a guy who taught me how to hunt and learned from the elders up in Canada how to hunt. And he looked at me and he said, I know. And it blew my mind. So it opened up a whole thing of my history on hunting and what I had seen before. Had I ever seen sign of them before? I certainly did. I remember it distinctly very well. I started checking out everything, and I came across the Sierra sounds. Now, some people will ask me, well, it sounds just like that. Well, I'm not going to sound the same in what I'm saying to you right now, these very 20 seconds. If you come to me and start talking to me a month from now, we're talking about the circus or something. I may have a different tone. I may be laughing in it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They definitely have their own language, but I could make it out. And it did sound like the Sierra sounds. I don't understand their language, but yes, the chatter, the samurai chatter, as everybody called it. I checked everything out. Is there any? I like ghosted these forums or whatever you want to call it. I would just kind of just be in the background, listen to people, eyewitnesses or whatever, and I'm like, there has to be somebody out there that had something like this happen to them. Please, there has to be somebody. It bothered me. I prayed almost every day. I didn't want to be the only guy out there because who was ready for this? You know, as it turned out, there are very few people that have been this close. There are extremely few people that I personally know of that have seen some form of sign language. Very few, but it's there. So we know that they're intelligent. So without getting into my whole philosophy on do we need a DB or not? Well, it's funny because we just had a thing that happened on everybody's forums just recently over the past couple of days, and it was I'm going to refer to migration. Migration is a long distance, okay? And people are saying, well, geese migrate. Well, that's cool. So don't butterflies, so don't hummingbirds. But you know what? We're going to compare them to butterflies and hummingbirds and geese. Why? Why have we never? Why is it so hard for us to compare them with something that's intelligent that buries their dead, other animals? Why is that so hard? I know the reasons why, and the research is out there. It's easy to get. People have to remember that back in my generation, the only thing we had was an encyclopedia, or you go to a library. You now hold the world's largest library in your hand, and you call it a phone.
Mm-hmm.
You can find all of this. You can find all the evidence that's been compiled. You can find all the stuff that they eat. It's profound. It's unbelievable what is out there, but we let our biases stand in the way. Don't let your bias stand in the way of this. Take a good look at this, because what is your plan? What is your plan if one of them steps out in front of you by accident or deliberately, or you come across one and surprise it like obviously I did by accident? Are you going to run, or are you going to Jane Good all this situation? Are you going to try the next step? We're already working on behavior and communication. A lot of people out there don't know this, okay? Because it's not shared. When I share things through other forums, it's not always shared. But you may hear little bits and pieces of somebody will stand up and say, well, I found this. Well, in my research, this is what I've come across. No, there are many people out there, they want to accuse them of being gatekeepers. They are gatekeepers because they found that what this person will do is they'll go to a conference or whatever, and they'll start claiming all of this stuff. There's people who have them living on their property. Mary Green, Janice Carter, okay? And everybody thought it was a joke. She's lucky if she sold 100 books, that there was so much information there. This is perhaps a story to some. So others, it's a testimony. And to some of you, I certainly hope you do hear that these things can communicate, and they will. And some people say, well, they're really bad. They'll tear you apart or whatever. Come break into my house. Disrespect my family. Try to hurt one of my family members, or try to take my food from me, and watch what happens. You will aggravate me. And you will aggravate them as any animal, a dog, or anything like that. That's behavior. Okay. Now, some people say, well, how can they possibly speak? Look up ancient language evolution. There are only two animals that can do that. We're one. And it has to do with how we're built. They are built the same as us, from the outside anyways. Other than the fact is, let me tell you, when that thing whooped, yeah, I've been to the zoo. I've had the lions roar right next to me. I've been to some loud concerts, standing next to that speaker and hearing that bass. It would make your drink shake on top of the speaker. That's what it was like. It was exceptionally loud, and it travels throughout your whole body. You know, I know that there are some people out there who are in a camp called the Woo, or the Orb, or the UFO. Or let me tell you two things. First, look up the poem of the blind men and the elephant from Indostan, and you'll find that these six blind guys all took one piece of an elephant, just touched one piece, and came up to a until they all got together and put it all together. That's where you are right now. You have to take it all and put it all together. They can do a lot more than we can do. And there isn't a man on this planet that's ever going to outrun them. You were let go is what happened, okay? I find another connection with them that I try to teach other people that are doing research. And that is, you have to have over 90% of all your close encounters, which occurs with hunters, they get very good looks of them, okay, have something in common. It was our mindset. We were at peace out there. We were respecting what's out there. And then there's trustworthy. And everybody will say, I'm trustworthy. Are we really? Are we really? We don't trust our own families.
Right.
Some of okay? It's very difficult. And this is what attracts them. Yes, they are curious. But just like a dog can smell you and know you, so can't they. We take too much credit away from them for what they can really do. And we have to take a better look at it and put this right next to us. I had one incident that I'm going to share with you, and I know this gentleman will probably hear this. He was going into the Kimikichi Mountains. He was a member, one of the founding members of the group of the 400. Him and one other guy, and they had to cut a trail into where they're going pretty deep. They're on ATVs, but they had to cut the trail. When they got into where they had already figured they should be on their GPS to set up camp to further their research area that they were in, they were getting off their ATVs, and the other guy with this gentleman had lost his walkie-talkie. He couldn't find his walkie-talkie. The other thing was that this gentleman also had some family pictures fall out of his pocket. He didn't know they were in his pocket because he just grabbed his coat and they went, hustle, let's get it all together. Let's get out there and do it. We get time off. So he put him in a zip pocket. Yeah, a couple of days later, they were leaving and they were coming back. They weren't even halfway back on the same trail. And in the middle of the trail were two rock cairns. In the first rock cairn was a walkie-talkie. And the second rock cairn was one of the photos. They, or I should say he, made a phone call to me. And he asked me, Ernie, what are we up against? Are these things far more intelligent than what we are thinking? Yeah. Yeah. How else do you think it can stay away from you?
Mm-hmm.
Their senses are a lot better. That's how they do it. They don't want anything to do with us. We can't be trusted. Native Americans, that they are the masters of the woods. They are the caretakers, the watchers. That is who they are. And they are our ancestors. We have a gene splice. Our DNA was tampered with at one time. Look that up at how long ago. It's called a junk gene. Why? What are we missing? What are we being misled about? Look up how long ago that happened. And then if you ever get a chance, look up Bigfoot Quest magazine, Todd Gatewood, winter of 2024, blue-eyed Squatch. It just may blow your mind where blue eyes actually did come from. And all the research information is right there that you can go back and look at it. And you can come up with your time frame and everything. It's incredible. So could they be what we once were? They could very well be. But we won't know that. A dead body isn't going to tell you anything. But if you sit down, like Jane Goodall did, you can learn a lot more about behavior. You may even get some answers since they are capable of communicating.
Do you think that because they are able to communicate with us and with each other, but they don't really trust us because again, we don't even trust ourselves. Why would they want to communicate?
Wow, Brandon. Let's put this out here like this, okay? Perhaps there is more that I found, okay? But let's just say this. Why would I want to communicate with anybody unless there's something that I want you to know, that I have to offer you? What if? What if that was it? That they could teach us something. Maybe they taught the Native Americans about herbs, medicinal plants, led them to food sources. What is it that they can do that they could teach us? It is in Native American prophecy that one day in the end of times, if anybody's ever been to a powwow, that they will come again. And they come from a certain direction because that opening to that sacred circle is always facing a certain direction, no matter where you go. And they're going to dance around the great fire, the sacred fire, with us one more time. What do you think that it is that we need right now in today's world that they could possibly offer us? Could it be of a spiritual value? When people say to me, what can we do now? Well, I told you years ago, and now you're here. So now there is truthfully only one thing that you can do, and that's pray. That's pray. And I don't really care if you pray to your rock. If your rock is a god or your tree is a god or whatever it is, take it seriously. Okay? What if it's a spiritual value?
There's been
That's
someone that I've talked to prior, and they'd mentioned the whole gene splicing thing. Like, basically we would come from them, or they were like an offshoot from us. But I've actually talked to a couple different people, and the theories kind of go off in different directions. But basically, they're a lot more like us than what most people want to admit to. And this happened, I think the one said about 10,000 years ago.
correct.
And basically, if you go by that, it's kind of almost in the same time frame as the Neanderthal of the offshoots were. And I've always wondered personally if like Sasquatch type creatures were just another hominid from that era that we just weren't aware of, because again, we knew of other hominids, but we didn't know where it's strange because there's also another version of humans that wasn't exactly human. And they claim that modernized Homo sapien wiped off like the Cro-Magnon and all the other ones. But what if these ancient beings are just some of the remnants left of what we used to be?
Yes, sir. I'm surprised. I'm actually shocked. Sounds like somebody's been reading that magazine I just mentioned. The blue eyes come from a certain group, and it dates back to that. And it is a gene mutation that started with that group. Let me put this out there. Darwin was paid to come up with, what's that called? The human train there, right? Evolution.
Yeah.
He was paid to do that. So there's something, when somebody pays you to do something, you do it the way they want you to do it. But perhaps maybe you want to hide something in your painting or something. You want to put something in there, so you hide it in such a way that it is hidden. Only certain people understand it. So let me say this. Darwin says that there's a missing link. How can you possibly know that anything is missing unless you know what it is
Mm-hmm.
to begin with? Okay? If you read the article by Ray Hardwood, it's going to make people really think like this very well could be. But they definitely can do something. They can do a lot of things that we can't do. I was on a show called Unredacted, I think, America Unredacted. Great guy, great show. And I mentioned supernatural, and he corrected me. He goes, "Oh, wait a minute. It's not supernatural, but it is. It's supernatural. Okay? They are super strong, but is there something that they can do besides just that?" I would have to say, yeah. Let's take a little magic act. The magic act where you take somebody and you lay them on the ground, and one person takes one finger and puts it underneath their arm around their elbow, and you get another one on the other arm, and another one down near the ankles on each side, and one on the back of the head. It's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, right? You can get kids. I weigh around 230 pounds. You can get kids using one finger each, 5 of them, if you know how to get them to concentrate, and they can lift me up off the ground. It's a magic trick that you can actually find online and do yourself. Whether you call it a magic trick, but what if it's got something to do with the power of our mind? That we're being distracted, that we don't know how to access that.
Most of our brain, we don't access. What is like 30% of our brain capacity that we actually use? The other 70% just lays dormant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, people, they think they don't have an ego. They think they're not biased. Well, you're untrustworthy because you are, because you don't know yourself. I dug inside myself. Instead of going down all these rabbit holes, I dug deep down inside myself. Why me? Then I started really looking at, why did this happen? What is in this? And it's a message in there. And this is a message that comes from 40 years ago to everybody. 40 years. That's a long time. You could have had this information 40 years ago. But why are we still stuck on tracks? Some people say tracks are not proof of existence. Really? Let's go hunting. And let's depend on solely what we get. If you choose to go into a field with no deer tracks in it or signs of rabbits in it, and I choose just the opposite, you're going to starve to death, because that's absolute proof that the rabbits are there and the deers are there. And when you see these tracks, they're there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do some of them appear to disappear? Yeah, but let's not forget, these things, they can not only just run fast, they can jump far. You know, there's been experiments on trying to tag them with, I think, a burr, and they actually tracked one using that system. I think it was something like 70 miles or so through the woods. This thing was running, and it was outpacing them on their ATVs. They could not keep up with it. They finally lost it. Okay. It knew it was being followed. They always take the high ground if they can. They always watch out. You know, if there's a family unit nearby, what would you do? If you're smart, and they obviously are tactical, because flanking me is a tactical maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
What they were doing by hunting those deer was tactical. Okay. So why would they not? What we do that, we'll set one guy up or a couple guys up around us while we take a nap, and they can watch out for trouble. How would you warn the other ones that were in your party? We, as human beings, even in war, we use hand signals. Now, where I learned the answers to that, I was at a powwow, and I was really seeking out to speak with knowledgeable people. And I figured that the medicine woman would know. Okay. And she told me to hold on, and she went in the back where all the tents were, and she came back out, and she goes, "There's a man that wants to speak to you, Ernie." And I followed her back out there, and in the back they had like blankets hung up so they could make little rooms where people would get dressed up in the regalia and stuff. And inside that room was a man by the name of Chief Ernest, the great grandson of Sitting Bull. And I get the chance to sit down and talk to that man for a pretty good length of time. And he told me what those hand gestures meant. Now, some people will say, well, is it Native American? Well, let's look at Wild Bill Cody's conference he had with what, 6 or 7 nations or better? They all pretty much had their own sign language, but there was nuances in them so that they could work it out and understand each other because they didn't understand each other's language. So is this something that has to do with it too? That they have an area? Yeah, definitely. They are far smarter than what we give them credit for. And they are heavily attracted to people that show that respect and are spiritually connected to the woods.
I kind of, and without going full on blown conspiracy person, I feel like they've known about these creatures for a long time, and they just don't want us to know about it. And I think that's why a lot of the old Native American ways of life and the way, because when the first settlers came over, they claimed a lot of this type of stuff that Native Americans talked about, like the spiritual aspects or whatever. Clearly, it was all witchcraft because look at what they did. They burned all these ladies and stuff for being witches and everything. So for us over here with our Christian-based things from Europe, we came over here and anything that wasn't Christianity, they started to pillage and plunder and get rid of all that stuff. And I think the Native Americans were very much in touch with the natural order of the world. And here we are hundreds of years later, and they just don't want to rock that boat. They want to keep whatever thing that they've had going, because if they come out and say that there are a hominid species that are on par with humans, if not even further advanced in the sense of how they are as a being, it contradicts a lot of the foundations that we've built as a society.
Sure. We carry on with that today.
Mm-hmm.
One religion against the other one, willing to kill each other over their religion. That's what we are. We are very warlike, and we would do that. Okay. The scientific community, people don't understand. For a hypothesis, you need to prove it twice. So when you hear somebody say, yeah, we got to get a dead body. No, you have to get 2. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and you know what? You're not going to get any answers out of it except that, wow, there we go. There's one right there. Okay. So you're spot on with that. Are there benevolent things that are out there? I can say this in all honesty. I went to a parochial school for a time, and we went to Sunday church all the time. Every Sunday, I stopped because if this exists, which it does, then what else is out there? As in the days of Noah, the veil was lifted and the world was destroyed basically because of it, because people started worshiping these things, different things that were out there or benevolent, because you can be tricked. Here's another one for you. I've worked with people who worked with the Warrens, and we would talk back and forth. And one of my things was, because I like to use an analogy, if you can have a haunted house with orbs in it and everything, and you can have a haunted battlefield with ghosts and orbs in it and everything, then why can't the woods also be haunted?
I've talked to someone before. You might know who he is. He is an author. I think it's T.W. Watson or W.T. Watson is what he goes by. But he wrote a book a couple years ago called Bigfoot, the Forest Poltergeist. And I bring this up often when people kind of go on that side. He said, if you look at people's haunted house activity and you hear all the noises that they make, or things get moved, things get thrown around, whatever, you'd say you have a poltergeist. But if you put all that out in the woods, you say there's Bigfoot around.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that are affiliated with the forest people. There's a lot of things I believe they can do. When I first started doing all of this, I believe strictly flesh and blood, because that's what I seen, that's what I encountered, that's what happened, that's what I had to go by. But through investigation and research, deep research, talking to many eyewitnesses who don't like to talk to other people because they wouldn't understand. That's one of the reasons why I came forward, to give them the courage to step forward, because I didn't want to be the only man standing in the field. Lock elbows with me. They definitely do use sign language. They can, and they have, with other people. They can do something that we can't do, and the message is out there.
When it all comes about, what do you think it's going to take to make someone actually understand that these things are out there? Do you think it's really going to have to take, like, at this point, we live in technology version of AI, so everything out there that gets put up as a photo or a video, everyone's going to write it off now.
It's
And
very misleading.
so
It's very. Go ahead.
I was going to say, even with a body at this point, I still think there's going to be naysayers that are going to
Sure.
not go along with it. So is one going to have to be captured in, like, in the Joe Public gets to go and visit him or something? Like, I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up.
Well, they're not going to. Sometimes I'll get aggravated and I'll be on somebody's forum or whatever, and it just happened. And I gave the impression that I was a podcaster. And I said, nobody's going to do this. And I'd like to be the first to do this. I'd like to have you on the show as somebody, because you don't believe that they're there. You're convinced that they're not there. Could you please come on my show and show the audience the proof that they're not there? They do not exist. This is something in everybody's minds. It would be fantastic to have you on the show. Would you be willing to do something like that? And his reply back to me was, well, they're liars. I said, you can't use that. I said, that's all you have is to say they're liars? He goes, well, where's your proof? I said, on the world's largest library. It's all right there. The tracks are there. That's proof of existence right there alone. I said, you can say and you can bully which way you want to do it to the eyewitnesses. It's not going to change anything because of your fears. Okay. Now, when you're going to get to AI, only you can see that picture is above my head right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's an actual artist's rendition right there. Let me just state this, that I could probably sell 1,000 t-shirts with AI on it, and that one there, and I assure you, okay, people faint away from. I haven't sold very many of those at all. As a matter of fact, I get rid of them and basically gave them to somebody else, okay, to do whatever, because I'm a lot older now. But it's uncanny valley is what it's called. Our minds are going to play all kinds of tricks on us, and we can't just sit and say, yeah, okay, I understand what that is. No, you have to recognize, become aware of what it is in you, and you are suffering from it. In order to do this, you need to understand the box, the sandbox that you are sitting in. Once you understand it and become aware of it, you have to get out of that sandbox and leave your toys in the box and start thinking outside the box. Just like you would if you went to college. You need to start thinking outside the box to put it all together. AI, almost 2 years ago, everybody was, oh, AI. And I told everybody, I said, this is going to destroy the community. It's going to totally muddy the water. And your red circles and your blurry pictures, let me be quite frank here. Me as an eyewitness, if I had one stand in front of me and I took that picture and it was blurry, believe me, I am not going to put it up for you to look at, because it would be such a disappointment to me. Think about that. If you have to draw circles around it, there's a problem. It doesn't count. It really doesn't. And we're going to go by the BFRO classifications. A class A is 50 yards. A class B is what? Sounds. If that's the fact, then what did I myself have, along with a very small group of all the eyewitness reports that anybody's ever heard? Out of 1,000 reports, there's probably less than 1% of those who have been this close. And can I really, really identify it? The average sighting is between 5 and 11 seconds. Never mind distance and lighting conditions and fight or flight and uncanny valley and everything else psychologically that's going on in your head. Between 5 and 11 seconds, you're not a Green Beret. You're not a Navy SEAL. Don't try to pull it off as that. Okay? You didn't have that much time. You probably wouldn't be able to identify your mother in low light conditions running on the edge of a tree line at 75 yards out. You wouldn't know what she was wearing or if she was wearing anything. So we have to look at those. The podcasters are having a brutal time sorting people out. We have to hear everybody, because some people may embellish their story, you know? So we have to, so there might be some piece of evidence in there. Are you going to get the people that are good liars, really good liars? They're smart enough, okay? They're smart enough, criminally smart, to be able to glean information out of what they know is the truth, because how a liar is going to know the truth, all right? And take that and to incorporate it into a story to get on a podcast. Let me put this out there for everybody. I haven't made a dime on being on somebody's podcast. The podcaster makes it by trying to bring you the evidence through the eyewitness that you are asking an eyewitness to relive. That would be like trying to get a combat veteran that is suffering PTSD to relive a situation again. And then some people feel that, well, you know what? I have the right. He put himself out there. I have the right to call him a liar and this and that. No, you don't. I have every right to come back and get you and say, call you names also. So that goes out to all the people. If you firmly believe they do not do it, start a podcast and get your people out there. There's a group that's out there that they basically is full of them. Eyewitnesses don't last 2 minutes on that forum. It's a joke.
Yeah.
I'm a member of that group because I'm there for exactly why I said I'm there. To let that eyewitness know that there is somebody here.
I've seen the groups that like to belittle everybody that come on there and say that. I don't know why people even go there and say anything without researching the group, because as soon as you start saying something, then you're attacked.
Don't know.
But there's also groups
excited.
that annoy me because they actually, I think it's okay for some people to be skeptical about certain people's claims, because some of the things you even touch base on it, like I've seen so many blurry photos and red circles that it's really hard to take anything seriously when someone claims they have so many experiences day in and day out, but yet they've shown you absolutely nothing.
Yeah. That's there's a lot of red flags in there, and I won't give them all up. You know, there was a time that I wouldn't give a complete description of what I saw because I knew that this AI was going to come about, and people were going to try to refine it until, and they would even contact me, or other people would contact me for them and say, "Is this close to what you saw?" Well, you know, the more information that you feed into that algorithm, the more the AI is going to use that. And if you feed it the wrong information, then it's the wrong stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works. Yes, I've heard some stories that I know were not true, but I felt really, really bad for the individual because I knew that there was something else that was going on there that we won't get into, that this person was really psychologically injured by somebody else or whatever, and or are suffering from something. And it's not my call to say something like that. Only that I can just say, okay, good. You know, it's not good, but it is okay. As podcasters, I try to tell some podcasters, you got somebody, you got my name. I used to do it for a man by the name of Larry Batson. Great guy. Passed away. I won't go into detail, but in any case, that's what he would do. That's how I met Carrie Arnold. That's how I met a lot of people who are doing podcasts today that had encounters. I was the guy they first spoke with. I was the guy that vetted them and got them on their first shows because I knew they were telling me the truth.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people mistake a lot of the podcast, and I don't try and sound like I'm holier than thou because I really don't care about any of that stuff. But I know there's people out there that literally are doing the podcast just as a way of making money.
Correct.
I don't make shit for what I do on this show. And like there are some out there that literally they don't care what the story is. They don't care if it's complete and utter crap. They will literally put it out there just because it's content. And that content generates the money and they live high on the hog, so everyone thinks. And that's just I have a full-time job. Like, yeah, I make some money here and there, but it's basically enough to keep the lights on in the place. I'm not living a lucrative business, and it would take a lot in order for me to not quit my normal job because my normal job is a lot better than what I do for this. I do this for the fact that I want answers.
They know they're doing it. They know they're doing it. You know, and they do it because they can't vet all these people and everything. So they're taking it down that road because the majority of people, was it P.T. Barnum?
Mm-hmm.
Had a little saying there. The majority of people like a bedtime story. They love a bedtime story. They love scary stories. They like to sit around the fire and tell scary stories. Okay, this is not a scary story in a way, but in a way it should be very scary to some people. Okay, they want that story. I've had not many comments, but I've had a few comments anyways that people are like, well, he was hard to follow. He gave out too much information. What do you really think was going through my mind that day? What was going through my mind is something phenomenal is happening to me. And I need to take as much information as I possibly can. The military trained me to do that. Fighting trained me to do that, to remain calm in the moment so that I could take in that information and relay the information to you. Otherwise, it would have been nothing but a story, a simple little bedtime story. But you got all the information. And people, it's on you. If you're trustworthy, use it. I've put this out and I've pleaded with people. You know, some people may think, well, he's arrogant or whatever. I've had people make fun of me about my teeth. Okay? Before I got teeth. All right? It had no bearing on the encounter or the amount of information that I received. I had really good teeth back when it happened.
People just have reasons to find an excuse to make someone else not be credible. Like they look for whatever they can just to try and ridicule someone or just because they don't want to believe, and therefore everyone is automatically a liar because they refuse to believe.
It's too hard. It's too hard to believe. I have stories, true stories of people, of groups of people that were so scared. A priest in one of them that was so scared, he asked these people who brought him in there to never speak about it to anybody because he didn't want it to get back to the church. Think about that. The area that I was in, let me tell you one good thing about that area, other than it being steeped in legend. Several of my friends were taken out of there by the Army National Guard for being in there. You're not allowed to be in there in that area. I went in there because we like to fish. We were from the hill towns. I went in there with a friend of mine, and guess what happened? A helicopter came in. They never got us, but they knew exactly where I was and my buddy was. How do you think they knew that? It was nothing but ground sensors. If you knew where I was and my buddy was by that use, then you also know that they are there.
Mm-hmm.
That is government property. They know that they're there. If they were to bring that out, if they were to admit to all of this, then guess what? This isn't a salamander, a rare salamander or a rare frog that will stop logging in an area. This is the forest people. And we would have to stop all kinds of things like fracking and logging and everything else and give them their land back.
I don't think it would sit well with most people in general for the fact thinking that there's these wild men, quote unquote, running around in their woods behind their house and they'd be afraid. I think
Yeah.
to throw out the whole UFO and alien aspect, they claim that they can't do disclosure because the average person can't accept it. I think it's the same way with like Bigfoot. If they
Absolutely.
were to tell people that these things were real, I don't think the average person could accept it.
That's exactly why I point to this picture behind me. One of these pictures that I have is I sold 45 of those like in a 2-year period of time. Why? Because you can't accept what they really look like. And that is they look very human like. And the closer you are and the more time you have with your mind to observe this situation, that's exactly right. Let's go back and look at Jane Goodall. What were the descriptions she was getting? That took an amazing amount of brass to do what she did and to prove it. And it wasn't just going up there and doing it. She went against mainstream academia. Okay. When you want to publish a piece of paper, you have to have these people sign off on it. These people that look at your paperwork, they've already done their doctorate and they already done their thesis. They would have to sign off and saying basically what they did is a little flawed. Who wants to do that when you're collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as being a speaker or whatever the case may be?
Mm-hmm.
If you notice at conferences, the people now are saying we want to hear from the real eyewitnesses. Why? Because they're catching on to the show. You got people wearing 3-foot long Bowie knives with handcuffs on there. What do you plan on doing with the handcuffs? The pretty boys, the pretty girls, where all these shows that are out there. How come you have not used anything that I have said? How come you have not gotten that close to them? How come you have not done the Jane Goodall thing with them and done that? Why?
I could tell you some stories about some of the TV stars, but that'll get me canceled.
Oh, yes, it will. And that's why I try not to say,
Yeah.
who or
No.
anything like that. But they know me. I'll guarantee that they probably know me, even though I might not know them. They definitely know me, and they know this story.
Yeah.
What's up with it? You'll put somebody on a show, you'll hear me, and you'll say, "Nah, man, oh, geez," The first thing that was told to me was by Terry Arnold, and I interviewed Terry Arnold, and he said, you just don't have that drama, that hype. And I said, I can't do that. I don't know if I do or if I don't, but I don't think I do. I said, I can't act a certain way to make something sound so fantastical or whatever. This is what happened. This is who I am. That's it. I'm just a person. I am who I am, shaped by what I lived through my life.
Someone criticized me for my own experience that I had years ago, and it wasn't because they didn't believe it. They just said it wasn't really all that interesting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll guarantee. I don't think I've ever heard your story, but I bet you that I could probably find something in that story that is helpful to everybody,
Yeah.
including your frame of mind when it was going on. Where were you thinking right before that happened, that morning, or hours before that? What were you thinking of? That was a question my wife asked me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what drove me on that trail of what was everybody thinking. And you know what? I found so far just about every single person had the same thing going on in their minds. The same thing. Very spiritual thing. Okay? Something happened. Something happened in our lives. Our minds were on somebody else or whatever. I can guarantee you this. It's sad when somebody dies in your life, but you will never doubt, ever doubt that there is something beyond that if it happens to you. And I pray that if something happens to whoever is listening to this, that I'm around and you remember my name or Brandon or many other podcasts that I've been on, and you call them and you tell them, because you are going to need somebody to speak with who will relate to you and understand and be able to tell you, to give you some answers. I hope that this gives some people some answers. Other people, I hope you had a good bedtime story. Okay. Now you can go get yourself tucked in, get your little hot toddy or whatever, but it will never change what is really out there.
Yeah. On that note, we can probably wrap this one up because I've been looking at it here and it is 22 degrees where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I get this. This is a coat I got. It was made, I believe, maybe in Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
I think. It's a freezer coat. I got to tell you what, I could probably stand out there in minus 20 weather. You know, ski equipment, snowmobiling equipment
Mhm.
is the best. It is the best. Everybody wants to brag about it, but it's called zero movement. I don't have to move around and I'm sweating. I got a little space here, but
No.
you know, I feel for you.
But
I
I've got
certainly
my
do.
I got my Carhartt hoodie and my Carhartt jacket on, but my feet are cold, so.
Mine too. I'm wearing, because I'm down here in Kentucky, I wear these big tall muckers because I just don't like, I've been bitten twice in my life. I just don't like creepy crawly things sneaking
Yep.
up on me.
I-
Okay. So, you know,
I don't blame you.
For that, I'm grateful for. My feet are cold and kind of cold in these now. They're only good for like down to 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's below, it's about the same temperature here as where you are, Brandon. You
I've-
know, I thought I had met you before. And now that I see you, I know that I've never met you. And I've been saying to myself, how is it that this guy, Brandon Tinfoil Tales, slipped by me, you know, and that we never spoke? Because I can't say I never have, because I've only done it 3 times where I've seen, maybe you were one of them, that put it out there on your post that you're looking for somebody. And I say, I'll do it for you,
Mm,
just because there are no coincidences. There's a reason, absolutely, for everything. If you really take it seriously and look at it, you can eliminate it, that it was not a coincidence. It was absolutely a reason for it.
I try not to say there's too many coincidences. That's one of the things that I don't really believe in. I think things happen for a reason.
And words are magical.
Mhm.
So if you plan on riding in my car, don't ever get in my car and say, I hope we don't get a flat tire, because I will pull over and I will let you out. Right there. There's things like down here, people are learning me because it's kind of secluded. So it's real hill town people, real family oriented people. And they'll say, well, it's supposed to snow. Don't talk about it. If you talk about it, you're probably going to manifest it.
Yep.
The simple power of manifestation, Dr. Dwayne Dyer, okay, Shakti Gowan, a whole bunch of them. So you can imagine, I've read a lot of books on spiritual things because I needed to know what happened to me and why me. And why me is, I have a message, and this is part of it right here that you've heard tonight. Indeed, there is something they have to offer us.
For anyone listening, if they would like to hear more from you, is there a way that they can reach out to you or somewhere where they can go to contact you?
You can go to, you can actually get merchandise from Richie, Banter with Richie and Wojo. Or I can direct you, if you go on X, because I'm almost all done with Facebook. You can go on X, and I'm on X as my whole name, and Sasquatch Whisperer. Okay, so it'd be Ernie Davio, Sasquatch Whisperer. And anything that I have, I'm transferring over for information like Uncanny Valley, ancient language evolution, stuff like that. Just go on there.
Okay.
You know, I like it a lot better. I don't have to put up with politics and hate. Hate is such a bad, bad word. We should never hate. And that's what makes us untrustworthy.
Mm-hmm. That is the whole community at this point is a bunch of hatred. That's what it seems like.
Yeah. Hatred, jealousy, egos,
Yep.
you name it. It's there, you know. And to filter through it, you can only imagine that a newbie had just had a sighting today or an hour ago. I hope you hear this message.
Yeah.
I hope that you seek out some of this knowledge and make contact with some of the serious podcasters. Brandon being one of them will tell you. Banter with Richie and Wojo, they have an amazing thing going on there. They listened, they utilized it. They have amazing results going on there. The Stetzers, they have Shelly and Steven. They have them living on the property, bona fide. Okay? But those are little baby steps you need to go through. And the first baby step is to become at peace with everything and get yourself spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need it if one steps out in front of you.
Yep. Well, Ernie, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes. I would love to hear your story someday, Brandon.
I've been on a few shows. I can send you a link to one of them.
Please do that. I would really love to hear it. I've heard a lot of the podcasters' stories, a lot of them that are bona fide, you know? Absolutely. And I think yours is also. I would just love to hear yours, because I realize that's probably was your catapult into this. You were seeking. Yeah, you were seeking out also, as I was. And back in the day, there was hardly any podcasters. Heck, there wasn't even people say, well, why don't you take your phone out? First of all, I didn't have time to do that. I had other things that on my mind that I was doing. Secondly, if I took the phone out, you're talking 1987 or so. There were no cameras on any phones.
Right.
Back there. Okay. So a lot of good that was gonna do me, you know, and nobody's gonna be, you know, hey, let me pop it out. And if you do pop it out, don't be drawing red circles around it and submitting blurry pictures. Okay, because you're not gonna make it to stardom. You know, it's difficult to get into it. They want the hype at the conferences and this and that. I will be at the one in Ohio. Watch some of the with Leona and Jim Forrest. Leona's putting it on, and watch it. It'll be posted up in a bunch of the forums and stuff, and you can catch me up there in person. I won't be selling anything. Okay, maybe the Brooklyn Bridge. Maybe I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge.
How far are you from Red River Gorge?
Oh, I'm right down near Cumberland Gap. I'm just on the outskirts of Daniel Boone State Forest. That's really something. And Cumberland Gap is the falls down there is the only place in the world where you can see a moon rainbow. Look that up. And the Mammoth Cave is the largest cave system in the world.
Yeah.
Down there in the world. I won't go in the cave.
I won't either.
It's not happening.
So I'm not a cave person. I'm not going anywhere about it.
It's not happening. I don't like deep water. I don't like water, and I don't like caves.
I don't like the ocean, and
no.
I don't like cave. I don't like anything where there's creepy crawlies. I'm not a big fan of that stuff. So
yeah, but sometimes you just have to. You take it for what it is. But if you're in that spiritual moment, you don't have to worry about it. You really don't have to worry about it. If it's your time, it's your time. If it's not, well, then it's just not.
Yeah.
You know, we understand that when we get older. But I'm sure you know a lot of the podcasters, Brandon. So don't be afraid to mention my name to them and just say, hey, guess who I just got to talk to? You have a good conversation with them. You all guys can get together, and maybe someday If you get to go to a conference, you can say, you better be having that Ernie Davio dude here, because I heard it. That dude loves hamburgers. You can keep anything else. It's you know what I mean? It doesn't. I can make it with a hot dog or whatever. I'm just happy to eat something like that, comfort food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would love to sit down with all of you, like Miguel Ramirez. Okay, I don't know if you know him, or a whole bunch. I mean, a whole bunch of you. And Todd Gatewood, you need to look that up, because that's where I think these other people got a little bit of their information from.
I'm not familiar with them. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, it'll be on there when you add all of this stuff. You'll hear me say it on there, and you'll be able to write it down. It's free on Kindle, but It's better to have it in your hand. And then you can call Todd, and you can say, Todd, I'm sending you this book. Or why don't you send me a book, Todd, and I'll push your book for you. But you have to sign that book for me. And he will.
Yep.
He will. Yep.
Well, again, it's been a pleasure talking with you. For anyone interested, make sure to check out. I'll put your links in the show notes for you. But we're going to wrap this one up. So thanks for listening. Thanks for Ernie for being here. And we will check you on the next one. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and get a hold of me, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. You can also find Tinfoil Tales on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Tinfoil Tales Podcast. You can reach out to me that way too. Remember to share the show around. Word of mouth is the best way to help the show grow. And just remember, truth comes at cost. Are you willing to pay the price?